back to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo. I am super excited to have a guest I've been dying to have for you guys because we're going to talk about women and money and investments. And this is so cool. Let me tell you about our guest, Sarah Beane Ricca. She's a certified financial planner and a certified divorce financial analyst. Sarah offers clients comprehensive financial planning that encompasses virtually every aspect of their financial lives. Sarah's passion for all things financial began as a kid, where at the age of 8, she was taught how to balance a checkbook. Are you kidding me? And was asking questions about financial markets at the dinner table. Wow. A lifelong student of budgeting, financial planning, and the markets, today she shares her knowledge with numerous professional groups, women's organizations, not-for-profits, speaking frequently on such topics as women and wealth, financial planning, leaving a legacy, world financial markets, and of course, the challenges of divorce. A cum laude graduate of Wellesley College with a BA in Economics and American Studies, Sarah began her career as a management consultant for Deloitte Consulting, focused on client service in the tech space. She then progressed to several technology firms before realizing she really wanted to professionally help people and their families achieve greater financial security. She chose Morgan Stanley in 2009, where she built a practice before partnering with Joe Kennelly to form the Hudson Ridge Group, a planning team of 8 focused on the financial needs of high net worth, multi-generational families and managing over $1 billion in client assets as of August of 2021. Sarah is the co-founder of the Bergen County Professional Women's Network and conducts an executive women's breakfast program at Morgan Stanley. I've attended. It's fantastic. She also is a sustaining member of the Junior League of Bergen County, where she served as president in 2008 to 9. A native Bostonian, Sarah now resides in Ridgewood, New Jersey, with her husband and their dog, Thomas. Welcome, Sarah. It is so good to see you.
Monique, you said you're excited about this. I am so excited about this. Thank you for the opportunity to join the podcast.
Oh, absolutely. It's good to have you here. You know, women and money, what a question, right? I mean, it's so strange that we don't like to talk about money, do we?
No, women will go to a dinner party and they will talk about sex, drugs, and rock and roll. You will bring up your healthcare problems. You will tell your friends about anything else. But if you had just gotten a bonus, you don't usually sit around a dinner table and say, hey, does anybody know what I should be doing with my bonus right now? Or someone passes away and you inherit money. It's not a conversation that comes up. And so, and I found out, for women in particular, there's a lot of confidence issues around having the conversation as well, which I'm happy to talk about. But it ends up being that men or women don't discuss such an important topic, and that can be super detrimental to them in the long run, as they need money for life and retirement and all the other good things.
So tell us about the journey from being, college consulting to being a CFP wealth advisor. Like, how did that transpire for you?
So I started out in management consulting, which was basically the idea of helping companies understand how to simplify processes. I worked with a range of executives. My focus area was the integration of business strategy and business process with technology and how to simplify that for people across an organization. Fast forward, truthfully, I was sitting in an office. My boss, who I loved, he was one of the best bosses I ever had. He's like, where are we going for lunch? If I'm sitting here 10 years from now trying to figure out where we're going to lunch with this guy, like, I need to do my own thing. So I'd always love personal finance. I never get tired of talking about money. It's really interesting. Many people get exhausted or it stresses them out and they get anxiety. I am the opposite. I never run out of things to have a conversation about. And so I started to look into financial advising, financial planning. I started reading a bunch of books on it and ended up getting recruited to Morgan Stanley to start out in their training program. So kind of a mid-career shift. And then built up a practice focused primarily for the first 8 years on the financial needs of women. And truthfully, it was because it was my happy space. I mean, when you start out in any business, you're building up a business, you want to be able to spend time on the things you love spending time on. And again, I never got sick about talking to women about their money, about what people should be doing, about providing advice. So it just sort of was a natural fit. And then it's grown from there. And then after having my own practice for about 8 years, joined up with another partner here in the office who his business had been in place over the course of multi-generations over 50 years. And so we came together and we have this amazing opportunity to work with clients. We actually have one of the highest percentage of women clients at the firm. So it's been a great experience, but quite the transition, not a typical path.
But it's funny, as you know from the women in the book that I interviewed, pivots are usually very beneficial to the long range game, and I think I want to kind of unpack that with you. It sounded like an organic, journey. Tell us more about the ebbs and flows. Things happened with you, for you, right? Along this path.
Honestly, not the boss sitting in the same office, but in that same office was this guy, Steve. And he said, well, do you know what your number is? And you've probably seen those commercials where they'll say, well, how much do you need to retire? And someone will say a gazillion or whatever the answer is. And so I said, I don't know. And he said, well, I'm reading this book called The Number. And I started to look at different books on this topic. And it was so interesting to me about how people figure out what their number is and what that looks like. And being a financial advisor is an interesting career in that you're essentially starting your own business, you're building up your own client base, but there's no capital outlay, right? I'm a W-2 employee of a large, renowned firm. It's an interesting way to start your own business, but you get to select your clients. You have to build a book of business when you come in, and it's hard. So it is kind of a major pivot, but the flip side of that is I'm not my own boss, right? I have to follow all the rules and regulations that fall within being a financial advisor, within Morgan Stanley, et cetera. I do get to pick my own clients. I get to work as much as I want. I get to focus on areas that I want to focus on. And there's a lot of longevity in this business, which I think is something that people don't realize. I mean, starting out, I was definitely the young kid on the block. The average financial advisor is, in their 60s. And that's average, right? There's a number of people that are, well into their 80s that can still do this.
Why do you think being a financial advisor and having the career that you have is a good one for women specifically? I mean, we talk about this more, globally, and the ages, they're killing me. Those are the average ages, huh?
I know, it's interesting. And there's not as many women as men in the business. And I have a bunch of theories on that. So one thing, this is just anecdotal, but I had a conversation with a friend of mine who was a dean at a dental school. And, right, fancy. And when she was going through dental school, she was like one of 3 women. And then fast forward, the graduates in the dental school are over 60% women. Why isn't that true in some other professions? I think in our profession, it's a little weird. People don't know what a financial advisor is until they have enough money to know what a financial advisor is. Because to your earlier point, you don't sit around the dinner table and have this conversation. I have one client that brings their kids to a meeting. The kids may know who I am, but most clients don't bring a child to a meeting. They don't really know what I do. And so why would you grow up wanting to do that necessarily if you don't really have an understanding of what it is? So I think that could be part of it. I have, again, that's anecdotal and just sort of a theory that I've developed over time. But it is such a great business for women. Women tend to outperform their male counterparts when it comes to investing in the performance of their portfolios. There's a lot of flexibility in this business. Like I said, you could select your clients, you could select how you work. We all have the ability to have this remote working relationship that lets you have some flexibility if you need to catch up on things at different times in the day, which can be different than other businesses. And you do sort of control your own destiny as it relates to your income level. So depending on how much you work or not work, it can vary. And so I think it's a fabulous, fabulous career for women. The one other piece of that is that women, and I hate to generalize, but tend to be very empathetic, tend to really listen well, and also tend to understand long-term planning and what that means. And that's the job description, right? Listen to a client. What do they need? How do I solve the problems? What do I need to put together to resolve those problems? Those are skills that everyone has, but in particular, I think women have a lot of strengths in those areas. So it's a great career for women. I wish more women would do it. They just need to know, it's hard to know. And I think people get freaked out by finance. There's a lot of stereotype there, and there's a lot of, sort of television media that doesn't help that. And so I think you got to kind of know somebody and break the mold. We here at the firm, we have a number of sort of mentoring opportunities and educational opportunities for young women because we want to create that pipeline instead of waiting until somebody's 40 years old and inheriting money from their parents and now they learn what a financial advisor does.
That's a very interesting perspective, though. I mean, not everybody can be balancing a checkbook at the age of 8. I find that story fantastic. And, like, where do you think that came from?
There's a couple of reasons. So my dad is a back office finance guy. So he was in the markets. He was in the markets. My mom was a math major. That's thing one. Thing two, I'm from Boston, as mentioned. I come from literally a long line of incredibly frugal people. And so the conversations about how to save money, what that looks like, those were actual dinner table conversations. Interestingly, my mom, whenever she was a systems implementation person, started out in the math business and did a lot of technology stuff and moved into that area. One of her basic interview questions for anybody she hired was, do you balance your checkbook? And so we were given checking accounts, which I've heard other people do that too. We were given checking accounts and writing checks and having to balance it out at a very young age. And I remember my grandmother always balancing her checkbook, trying to catch the bank, right? See if she could, we're off by a penny, and she'd march right down there and get her penny back. So I think that's part of it, but it is not normal in this country for sure for people to sit around the table, talk about money, talk about how to go through things. And also I think a little bit is probably me in that I was pretty driven at a young age to kind of know that I wanted to go into business, know that I wanted to, go to college, what I wanted to do, what I wanted to study. I had that figured out maybe younger than the average kid.
What's your favorite part of what you do now?
That's such a great question. There's so many things. I love, client meetings. I love advice. I love speaking publicly. I love figuring out a financial plan. I love figuring out how to make something that stresses people out easy. And I have like the best example because I just got out of a meeting and we just have done this for someone. So we have this, we have a number of clients who are about to retire or going into retirement. And one of the hardest things to figure out, doesn't matter how much money you have, is where am I going to get the money from and what does that look like? So we started out, we said, you know what, we're going to send you a paycheck. It's going to go right to your checking account, just like if you're working. And people are like, okay, that's great. But then you realize the follow-up question is like, how are you guys figuring that out? And are you sure there's going to be enough? So we started creating this like very simple, small little sheet that's your smart income plan that shows you year by year where you're going to get your money written in plain English. As soon as you do that, that anxiety level and the stress level about, okay, I'm really going to do this, I'm really going to retire and this is going to work out, it's just alleviated. So we have a client who's been stressed out about this, and we just gave her the spreadsheet. She's like, I can't tell you, like, it just changed everything. Just taking a look at, she just said that half an hour ago. She's like, it changed everything just to be able to see this is where it's going to come from. And so, where we hear stress, to try to alleviate that through data and through simplifying complex topics, that's so much fun. It's so much fun to have a little tiny spreadsheet that gives somebody peace. Like, what a cool job that is. Can I tell you the worst part of the job? People die. Worst part of the job, point blank, we do a lot of, we do a quarterly client meeting where we talk about what's happening in the markets, and we're doing one soon that we're going to start talking about just making sure all of your estate planning stuff is in order, making sure all your titling is correct, all the other important things, that your accounts are consolidated, that you're making things easy for the next person to come in line. We can make things really easy here for people. They don't always realize that, but it sucks. It just sucks. And so that is like the worst part of the job. And we've had a couple of young people pass away in the last year who I consider dear friends, and it's the worst. But
yeah. No, I mean, so getting back to that, because we want to unpack some things that women don't necessarily talk about often, right? It's not part of our DNA. We're not not, most of us are not raised well. My parents had no money and they didn't know how to manage it because they didn't have any of it, or they lost it. It's a whole thing. So anyway, I didn't have that training. I didn't have that ear, but I was always told live below your means, which was kind of the way we had to be because we didn't know whether we were going to eat that week or not eat that week. But anyway, whatever. The point is, so you have this, you just said something that's very interesting. These people die. And is it stressful for you and the families because they didn't put the right ducks in a row and they didn't have the planning documents and the planning of the money strategies before they died and it made it worse? Is that also part of the stress?
So if they're a client of our teams, we have to worry a lot less about that because we are, but if they have outside assets or somebody will come to us who's just had someone pass away, a parent, spouse, whatever. They come to us and there's 10 stock accounts and 7 bank accounts and some weird, and we can make that easy for someone, but that is not fun. And when you're sad, you don't feel like doing any of that. And so anything that we can do to make things easier, if they're already here, then it's just sad, if that makes sense. But as an example, we had somebody pass away. The spouse, the remaining spouse was not the primary finance person in the family. We often see a division of labor in every family. And so I'm going to go and sit with him and just kind of go through everything to make things easier and figure out what we can help with and how to make things, even if everything wasn't necessarily at the firm, to make things as easy as possible. And that's a nice thing that can come out of this because he's working with us and we did have a lot of things super organized, but especially when there's a sudden passing, you're very grateful that you did have everything organized well. And to your point on, everybody wants to go to heaven, nobody wants to die, right? Nobody wants to talk about that, but there's some really easy things. And as an advisor, I can have a checklist for people that just kind of goes through those things to make sure that that their ducks are all in a row to make it easy for their family in the event that something unfortunate happens.
So just to unpack that a tiny little bit before I go to my next question, like what is the baseline thing a woman that's listening to this podcast, let's say she's anywhere from 40 to 60, and what does she need to be remembering that she needs to do kind of thing before she...
Yeah, there's some really easy things. So the titling of all of your accounts should be appropriate. Making sure the beneficiaries are correct on everything. So as an example, if you don't have a beneficiary on your IRA or your 401k, or you have the wrong beneficiary, let's say you go through a divorce and your ex is listed as the primary beneficiary, it's going to the ex. It's not going pursuant to your will. Whatever's written as the beneficiary is where things go. And so just making sure that all of those are updated and where you want them. Making sure that you had a good conversation with an attorney, and we can help with the questions for that attorney, and then those legal documents are drafted and then implemented accordingly. How many people out there create a revocable living trust and then don't title anything in the name of the revocable living trust? So now if something happens, is what's going to be pursuant to the trust. You can have other documents that kind of look at that, but it's really important that the work that you get done actually then gets implemented. So it's one thing to say, well, I met with the attorney, but it's another thing to say, well, did you do everything they said as a follow-up? And a lot of attorneys will write things in attorney lingo, right, which is their job. And so we can help with some of that translation or go back and ask them some questions to make sure that everything is done appropriately. But those are just some of the basic things that we make sure everybody has in place.
That's awesome. That is truly, that was a masterclass right there, you guys, honestly. So you have like this phenomenal career. You have an industry-wide reputation. Like when you say Sarah Morgan Stanley, it's like, oh yeah, we know who she is. Oh, that she's amazing. You are the preeminent, I think, poster child for a successful female planner, certified, financial planner. Like you don't want to even think about going to anybody else. This is what I'm picking up, what you're putting down, girlfriend. So having said all that, now we're looking back. What would you tell your 30-year-old self, knowing what you know now?
I know. I love this question. I think this is what I tell 30-year-olds, right? Which is follow the path. Like you don't necessarily know at 30 where you're going to be. So if I had said to myself at 30, you're going to be a financial advisor sitting in, I think I lived in New Jersey, but sitting in Paramus, New Jersey, I might not have believed myself of that, and that I was going to, build a practice, etc. So you do have to follow the path, and you have to listen to yourself, and you have to know what your values are, and make sure that what you're doing aligns with your values. And that can change. Priorities can change, but if you lock yourself into anything, you may miss out on an opportunity that might be the right thing for you. There was a great article recently about New Year's resolutions, and they had people write in about things that they had been thinking about. And somebody, I think he was older, like maybe late 60s, and he said, I just started saying yes to everything. And I thought, that's kind of the idea. Maybe you don't say yes to everything because you do have to have a job and make money and sort of be a responsible citizen, but thinking about what are those opportunities out there and not locking yourself into what things should be, but thinking about what is possible, which you are the expert on, I think can really make a big difference to people in their life. So don't close yourself off to that.
Yeah, I think I think personally, I would say that as I'm getting older, I'm much more about the yes and protecting my yeses and protecting my no's in order to say more to the yeses that give me joy. But I want to unpack this women and money and the relationship that women have with money is a really important topic. One of the main reasons I wanted you on the podcast. And I know that we're going to speak in generalities, and I understand that. But what are you finding amongst your female clients is the common thread?
So women and money is an interesting thing. Really anything is an interesting thing, right? But when they study what some of the issues are, it's really that crisis of confidence. So for a woman to feel confident in a subject matter, she needs to feel as though she knows 75 to 80% of the content. And what happens to really smart, really successful, really accomplished women is they know that they could learn this stuff, or they should spend some time figuring this out. But I haven't spent the time. I don't really have the desire, so I haven't made the time. So instead, I'm going to do nothing until I figure it out. Or I'm not sure who to trust in this area, so I'm going to do nothing until I figure it out. And I would say just starting would be one thing, but recognizing that crisis of confidence is so important. You need more data to make decisions. So what is the data that you need to be able to make decisions to make sure your financial house is in order? And I think one of the first things I do when I'm talking to anybody is stop all the guilt around, I shouldn't have let my spouse handle this, I should know this stuff, all these other things. Like, we don't teach this in school. The reason I have a job is because people hate this stuff, right? That's literally why I have a job, is because people don't want to do it themselves. They will go to a total stranger and say, here's all my money, go make sure I don't mess this up. And my job is to take that money and go ahead with that, right? It's a very odd thing that way. But you need to know that you're doing that with the right person. And so that's part of the things, that listening and understanding what people need, and then making sure that we are implementing that accordingly. But not beating yourself up over the fact that you haven't done this, right? Because they didn't teach it to you in schools, and there's 225,000 financial advisors out there. That's our job, is to help people with something they may not want to do themselves, right? And so I think giving yourself some grace on that and just getting started are really, really important. And those would be some of the common things that we see. And then the not messing it up, there's a lot of ways to say that, but the not messing it up, I think, is really ultimately, you could have $100,000 or $100 million. How do I not mess this up for myself? How do I not mess this up for my children if I have them? How do I make sure that I give the right money to charity that I want to give to charity? How do I make sure I have everything tax efficient, that my legacy is in place? How do I not mess this up? And if I ask 10 out of 10 women, but 9 out of 10 women, what do you need? Would that be helpful? Everybody says yes, because that's really what this is ultimately about. Some people would say, I don't want to eat cat food and live in a storage locker, which is like apparently many people's version of Armageddon. And obviously we're helping plan against that, but I think that the real, how do I not mess this up so that I'm good to go, is really what this is about.
Right. So what would you want to tell women about managing their money, how to handle their portfolios if they have money? What do you want to get across? This podcast is for you to amplify your core message to these women. What do you want to tell them?
Well, so it starts with getting organized, right? Financial planning isn't sort of rocket science in the sense that you really could go out and figure it out yourself if you wanted to. Most people don't. But it's about getting organized. And I think for some people, and you sort of alluded to this when you were talking about your story, everybody has a money story, right? So some people, this conversation gives them like huge anxiety. Some people are like, just tell me what to do and I don't really care about the rest. And then some people are like, can you show me what's under the hood? I want to go DEFCON 5 on that investment, right? So it sort of depends. You have to kind of understand your person and know how you can help them across that spectrum. And I think that that's really what I do, right? Come to me. I can, after having done this for a long time now, I can hear what someone tells me in about 20 minutes and say, okay, here are the next 3 things I think you need to do, and tell them what to do and how to do it. If I leave that conversation, and there's sort of 2 outcomes to that. One is if I leave that conversation, I gave them 10 things, they're never going to do it. 3 may even be too much, but I may know that there's 10 things. And so what I do is we have a very simplistic way of organizing people. And I say, okay, I know what those 10 things are. So over the next year, we're going to get those 10 things done. But if I've done my job right, that didn't feel painful to you. And that's where, and then you go back, you fast forward 2 or 3 years, and somebody will look at, here's how much money I've accumulated. Here's how organized I became. I'm not stressed about something that was stressing me out before. And then you just sort of rinse, repeat. One of the things that we do that's like, I don't know why it's different, but we set these meetings up like the dentist. So when you come and you have a conversation with us, we book your next appointment at that meeting. It can change. People are busy, all that stuff. None of that phases me. But we have that regular cadence so that people feel calm knowing that I have that next meeting. Now, if all of a sudden you're given a huge job offer between conversations, you just ping us and we have that conversation. But just trying to make things as organized, easy, simplistic as possible is really important, especially because the number one thing that women value in a financial advisor is efficiency. Don't waste my time. I don't want to come to a meeting and do chitty chat about the game last night. I just want to know, are you listening to me? I need to tell you what I want to have going on. Yes. That is the number one. Studies have shown. Yes. There's a great study that came out about 10 years ago called The Power of the Purse. And it was commissioned by like 6 big firms on the street, and including us. And really, really interesting things that they found. And the other piece of that, to my earlier point, is there are a lot of women with a lot of money out there that don't have a financial advisor. And I think that has to do with that crisis of confidence, compounded by the fact that I may be 50 years old, I've accumulated a bunch of money, and I'm kind of embarrassed to go have a conversation with someone because I haven't done that yet, and I should have this figured out by now, but I don't. And that's why I always lead with, don't beat yourself up over that, just get started and let's get organized, because that's a real thing out there.
So your message is it's never too late to start.
It's never too late to start. It's never too late to start saving. It's never too late to get organized. We're in this huge wealth transfer area right now too, where we're going to see trillions of dollars move between generations. And there are going to be a lot of people out there who maybe have never managed a lump sum coming in before that are going to need to figure that out. And so nobody should feel bad about the fact that they may not have that all figured out if they're not a financial advisor as a career, right? So it's really important to just make sure that, okay, what are the things I need to do? The other fun, horrible stat around that is 95% of people, when they inherit a lump sum, will spend that lump sum within 1 year. So have you heard about like a lottery winner wins and then they go bankrupt? It's that idea. And I can tell you it happens all the time. So we have lots of different ways to handle those kinds of liquidity events. But, maybe you get a budget to blow. We put people on an income, pretend you never had the money. There's a lot of different ways to kind of, that I tell people that stat all the time, but I have seen it, and it's, I'm like, you don't want to be that statistic.
What do they blow it on? That sounds crazy to me. Like shit, right? Stuff.
A lot of times it's housing and big ticket items. People, when it comes to budgeting, everyone wants to go after their cable bill. I don't know why. Like, they're like, I'm going to cut my cable bill, my phone bill, it's my groceries. No, it's big ticket items. It's travel, it's housing, it's cars, it's, spending money on your kids. the two other big areas, now you're going to get me on a tangent here, but the two other big areas of spending that we're seeing that people don't talk a lot about, one are pets. People spend a ton of money on their pets, and pet insurance doesn't cover it. And you really need to budget for it, because when your dog is 40 and they blow out an ACL, you're going to fix it. And it's $5,000, $8,000, and that's a lot, right? That can add up. The other area that people don't think about is dental. So what happens is, and I had this conversation with the dentist, because I was like, this is just a fascinating conversation about the importance of dental health. I'm not a dentist, but dental health is really, really important. And what happens is you have dental insurance while you're working, and people are able when they're working, but then you retire and there is no dental insurance, and dental insurance doesn't always cover everything anyway. And now all of a sudden you're retired and it's $15,000 to fix a tooth because you have more teeth issues as things get older. And the other thing the dentist said is people put off the dental work until they retire because they don't want it to interrupt their work schedule. And now they're not on the insurance. He said it happens all the time. And then they're like, what do you mean it's going to be $8,000 for me to do this? And he's like, I told you 3 years ago, you should take care of this.
I'm not laughing at it. I just am laughing because human nature is so stupid sometimes.
And it's a weird business also being a financial advisor because you really get very personal with a lot of people. But you have a conversation. And so one of the things I spent a lot of time reading about this whole dental health thing, there's so much correlation between your dental health and your physical health. And if you come to me and said, what does success look like? Our clients are going to say, I want to be as healthy as long as possible so that I can enjoy all the money that I put away and all this hard work I put into my financial plan and all of that. And so brush your teeth.
Brush your teeth, damn it. That is awesome. That is awesome. Tell us, just to conclude, who is your ideal client and how can we help you?
Oh, that's so sweet. So most of our clients have, I'd say, $2 to $50 million with us. They tend to be really smart, busy people who are looking for somebody to collaborate with on their financial plan. We have a lot of women. We have a lot of multi-generational families, which means we start with a woman who maybe went through a divorce, and so we start helping her kids, and then maybe we help her parents, and then maybe we help the sister's family, and sort of that thing has grown over the years, which is great. Side note to that, if I'm my age, I may want to be managing or knowing where my parents' money is so that in the event they need my help, it is easy for me and easy for them. And so we see a lot of children who then bring their parents over to make sure that they know how it's all going to go down if anybody needs it. But yeah, and then help, obviously, would love anybody who's in the New York area and wants to come to events, can ping me, you can find me online. But happy to help people with consultations, or if they are looking for someone. This is a judgment-free zone. So if you haven't done anything, or if you need a second opinion on what you have done, happy to help anytime. Love the referrals. I think they say 70% of referrals come from outside of your client base. I think that's true for a lot of professions, actually. You refer, you'll send other people to someone, but maybe you have your own person already. It's kind of interesting. So just, happy to have my name in the queue for people who are looking for strong financial advice.
I would recommend you in a heartbeat.
See? There you are.
All right. So Sarah Beane Ricca just gave us a masterclass in financial literacy, financial acumen, financial thinking, and the judgment-free zone and the guilt-free, it's never too late is really a great message for our listeners and our viewers. Thank you for that, Sarah. That's really great. I hope that they can appreciate you closer up and get to know you as the professional that you are. Thank you so much. It's great to have had you on the show.
Thank you so much, Monique. This is such a pleasure. This is my happy place, so I really appreciate you letting me be in it.
We can tell you're lit up. I love it. Bye, everyone. See you soon. Remember, anything is possible with a little intention and a little planning. Bye. Thank you so much for listening to Possibilities with Monique DeMeo, where we unpack life as a female mover and shaker. If you like the show, please consider liking it, or better still, subscribing to it and leaving us a rating. It truly does help. Also, you can pick up my book, The 7 Secrets to Creating a Life You Love, a practical guide for women in leadership, You can find the book, other episodes of this podcast, and how to stay in touch at MoniqueDeMaio.com. DEMAIO. I look forward to seeing you again soon. With gratitude, Monique.